that last selfie in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Welcome back to The Good, the Bad, and the Orange. Episode 2, Volume 2. I don't know if that's true or not. We've moved from the basement studio, which was really upstairs. It looked like a dungeon, to our Scottsdale Quarter location, which is far more luxurious.
Very sexy.
Yes. And we've added some, I don't know what we want to call them, color commentary. Color being, is blonde a color?
I think so. No one gave us a memo about wearing orange, so we had to do the blonde coordination thing. Bill didn't get the memo on that.
You know, it's a global movement. Come on.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so we're back, and we've thought about over the last 2 weeks since our first episode. What can we expand on, and what are topics that people are talking about? And I wouldn't say it's tariffs. Let's not talk about tariffs today, because that's up and down. But a lot of people say, gosh, I'm going to wait to buy a house. I don't know when to buy a house. But I think the first question is, how do you decide to get ready to buy a house? Mm-hmm. And I don't think it just applies to first-time buyers. It applies really to everybody. You see people that haven't bought a house in many years, and they remember how it was 20 years ago.
Right.
Boy, we're not in Kansas anymore. So what's the first piece of advice? Someone comes in, they said, I don't know, I'm renting. I know I'm flushing money, like Bill said, over 3 years. You could literally flush $100,000 down the toilet in a way. You don't get you don't get a write-off for it. You're paying someone else's mortgage.
You get to live somewhere.
You do.
Yeah.
The basic purpose of shelter, right? Of course, there are other shelters. There's bridges. There's living in my 72 Pinto or something. Yeah.
Van down by the river.
Was there Pintos in 72? I'm not sure. Hang on. So Stephanie, what's the first piece of advice? What do you think? How should people start to tee it up?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing I would do is identify why I want to own something as opposed to renting. So for some people, if you're going to be moving in the next year or two, renting's probably the way to go. But if you're looking for a long-term investment, 3 to 5 to 7+ years, you really want to start thinking about making a purchase.
I think, one of the things, it's interesting you say that about investment, and we were talking earlier in our pregame about how the number one reason people buy a house isn't investment, right, Bill?
Right. Yeah, as a matter of fact, most people, I think, if you look at the NAR profile of home buyers and home sellers, the reason that people move is because of a job or they want to be closer to family. But usually it's more of an emotional thing than it is a financial thing.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Heather, you're just dealing with your niece. Mm-hmm. So why is she thinking about buying a house? Because how old is she?
She's just turned 30.
Okay.
So it's time.
Yeah.
So she wants to have something of her own and stop paying someone else's mortgage and stop, being in apartments and things like that. So it's kind of like a next passage kind of thing. I feel like for some people, it's like, okay, I'm an adult now. I'm going to grow up and get my own place, my own house.
Basement, right?
Yeah. So I think, and it's a great investment. It's the first step in building generational wealth is through home ownership. So I think it's a great plan. And like I said earlier, I put her in front of a lender because you want to do that sooner rather than later. You don't want to say, oh, I'm ready to buy a house. So no, you need to tee it up. You need to know what you need to do to get yourself financially ready. We talked about closing costs, things that people don't realize that are going to contribute to, the monies that they're going to need to put down. So, so that's kind of what she's thinking about doing. But any first-time home buyer or even though somebody's, like you said, bought a house 20 years ago, the game has changed and you need to be prepared.
Yeah, there's strategic borrowing. There's, am I buying a second home? How do I do that?
Well, especially, and then there's the buy-sell. Because somebody buying their second home typically has something to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, yeah.
And how do they bridge that gap?
Correct.
Right.
I think it's important, you talked about the first step was getting her connected with a lender, and Google has made it really easy to find multiple lenders, and the one who pays the most money to be at the top tends to be the one to choose, but that isn't always the best choice. Same with agents, actually.
Sure.
But you talk about a first-time home buyer versus someone who's buying a second place or an investment property, maybe they're going to rent it when they're not here. Those are different financing vehicles, and no different than agents. Not every lender is best at every loan product, and so it's kind of matching up that personality. That's why it's important to start with an agent who can play that match game.
Right.
Yep.
Not only do we help people find houses, we help them find lenders. We help them find other vendors that they need throughout the process. So even like with a FERPTA, you need to have a CPA in place. So
Yeah.
there's all those different things that people will need, and we are a great resource.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like buyers buying a house that's got FERPTA, and if no one's explained it to them, they think all of a sudden they're going to be responsible for, and they could be actually, but it's
I had somebody in New York who bought a property in Florida where that exact thing happened. And now, a year and a half later, she's getting a bill from the IRS because they said that the taxes hadn't been paid. And it's her responsibility. So it
Whoopsie-doodle.
started this whole challenge. So, yeah, better to take care of those things before it becomes a problem, because that can be a very expensive problem.
We actually had one of our agents who, kind of the same thing, the title company didn't have a FERPTA department. And it was actually a big title name. So there was no one to collect and hold funds, so they needed to get a FERPTA attorney involved for that particular case. So again,
Interesting.
that's part of our job, is to understand and navigate those things so that when that little curveball happens at the end, we're making sure that buyer is protected. So I was looking on our Moving to Arizona site, and it's interesting the questions that keep coming up over and over again. They're not always that easy to answer. I want a place that everyone's connected. I want a place that has great schools, and I want a place that has no crime. And
Okay. Where is that? I'd like to
So
know
do
as well.
I.
yeah, so but
Antarctica.
So isn't that a real question though? I mean,
Yeah.
people want the idyllic lifestyle, and there are those, but that doesn't necessarily fall within white picket fences and that. So I mean, how do you counsel people on that? I mean, that's
Well, you have to be the source of the source.
that's right.
First and foremost, there are fair housing laws that need to be followed by every realtor,
Right.
every agent, not even just realtors, but every agent across the country. And there are different protected classes depending on where you are. You have the federal protected classes, and you have local, state, and city protected classes too. So with that kind of question, though, it's really important to make sure that you're not steering a client based on your own personal opinions. It's against the law.
Yes.
And the protected classes, which could be somebody's race, religion, their ethnicity, like these different handicap, these things have to be taken into consideration. So usually when somebody asks me that kind of question, I let them know, and that's great that we have a disclosure about fair housing, but I let them know that fair housing laws prohibit me from answering some of those questions. However, I do have some resources for you that can help you to make that decision. One of the best things that I think that we have as professionals is RPR,
Yes.
where there are neighborhood reports, and you can do that based on town, zip code, or even communities, which kind of provide some demographic information within reason. And then there's other sources online that you can look for that too.
Well, the source of the source. You
Right.
actually summed it up.
Exactly. I just say a lot more words than Heather.
No, well, Heather just cuts to the chase. And don't waste any words today on this. Well,
There's
but-
a buyer's advisory for a reason. Please read it.
Correct.
Don't just sign it, but read it. There's hyperlinks in there that can point you in many different directions and give you the information that you're needing as a buyer.
That's really an interesting point. They say all agents are created equal, and that's kind of what I think gives our industry a bad rap. But we're not all created equal, and knowing where those sources are and making sure people understand those sources,
Sure.
whether they read them or not, right? You can't make someone do that, but I think of all the times it's even with rentals, reading the tenant advisory.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
understand what you're getting into, and that's just a part of our daily process is helping people when they're starting the process, especially, or another state. Not all states are created equal either. People come in and say, well, we didn't do it that way in Illinois, which is an attorney state, or New York, where Bill was, and even the similar states like obviously from Minnesota, but there's some similarities, but they're not. I just had a closing with a client, and he was, I got my stuff. We let them, I had a pre-possession, got their stuff in there, so why can't I stay there? He said, our house is sold, everyone's signed, everything's at the escrow company. Well, because you don't own the house yet. Because here, it all gets collected, right, in escrow, and then they push that magic Maricopa County button, or whatever county you're in, and it records. Then there's the magic transfer, but people forget if you're from a different state, it might be a different way of doing things. In Minnesota, sometimes you wouldn't see your recording information for 6 to 12 months. But that didn't mean you didn't own it, but you needed your title company and your title insurance and all those things to protect you. So.
And do you think that a lot of the agents here locally, they don't utilize the buyer advisory as much? Because I definitely try to sit down with clients and go through that, and it's probably the most robust document we have for a buyer to do their investigatory work. It's, I think, the longest document we have at all in our purchase contract. So it's probably the thing you want to spend the most time on with your buyer.
That makes sense. It's a really, really good resource, to your point.
Well, and as we, in August, here August 1st, because, Arizona's so progressive in their enforcement of rules, we started to have to implement a buyer broker, right? Not that most of us, a lot of us hadn't before, but now it really had some teeth. And I think that's part of what separates agents as well. Buyers need to understand really what they're getting into. What's their role? It's not just our role.
No.
Sure.
We all have responsibilities, and that's that opportunity to go through a buyer broker or the buyer advisory. And market conditions. I love that. Whoever wrote that was, let's protect everybody. The market goes up, the market goes down, so no one can
It's
predict.
the hokey pokey.
Yeah. The hokey pokey of real estate. You turn yourself around, the market crash goes back down.
Every time I present the market conditions advisory, my client looks at me like, yeah, we know.
I know. It kind of seems ridiculous, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's crazy because people, even though I've bought and sold 20 houses, okay, well, guess what? Every time it's different. And I think that's what's so important about the buyer advisory, though, is to have that consultation. And people, unfortunately, don't want to sit down and talk about all these things. They think they know everything. And it's like you send them over these documents to sign with their purchase contract, and it's just like, okay, click, 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 done, signed. It's like, okay, well, that's why it's important to take the time to have the initial consultation with the client and not just figure out what they want and need, but okay, here's what's protecting you as a buyer, and these are put in place for a reason. It's not just because we want to send you all these documents to sign for fun.
Yeah, I like to provide a purchase contract and all the documents they might encounter in a buyer consultation prior, way before we're in a position to make an offer on something. They may not remember every detail, but they might harken back to some part of the conversation, and so this language is not foreign to them. They've seen it at least once.
Correct.
Well, and the other thing that speaks to is, we were talking earlier about with our executive producer here, Andy, who said, if I separated myself from my situation, looked at my generation, we said, how would you seek out an agent? And he said, well, I might go to Google, or I might go to the Zillow. I'll go to the Zillow and find a property I like. And then there'll be a list of agents there, and I'll click on one of those, and that'll be the agent. That is kind of roulette. Now, there are some excellent agents who are on Zillow. Sure. There are others on Zillow.
They're just buying leads.
And I think that's the part that I don't think the buying even or selling market understands, is that lead generation, just because someone's really good at lead gen, cold calling or whatever, doesn't necessarily make them the most qualified. It'd be like going to Attorneys R Us to find your attorney and go, oh, that one, oh, that's a nice picture. Click, that's what I'm going to do. We don't do that with other financial advisors. We seek out someone who's had an experience, or we research, or, you know, and I think when we start talking about protecting buyers, think about how's their earnest money protected? What are their ways out? Does everyone understand that? Do they really understand when they put $10,000 down? It is at risk to a certain point, but having all those strategies in place takes experience, right? To have gone through those and sometimes learn the hard way. But anyhow, I think that's important when we're seeking out.
So let me
Bill?
ask you a question then, Jay. So if somebody were to go to Zillow, you know, like you had said, and just clicked on contact agent, you're getting that one agent. You know, you don't necessarily have to work with that person.
No.
Maybe it's a good place to start. I don't know. There's different places to find agents. But what would you suggest somebody do? Would they interview, you know, more than one agent? How many agents should they interview? Should it be this full consultation? Can it be a phone call? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so, you know, my position on and all of ours really company-wide is you have to build trust. You have to feel like you trust who it is. And I don't think that's necessarily related to years of experience or reviews or numbers of sales per se. I mean, that could be a component. I really want someone seasoned in a certain area. Okay, I see all their sales are in this area. Okay, that might be a place to start.
Right.
When you talk to somebody, not the text or email version, but you talk, and especially if you meet with them, we all have that little thing in our mind that goes, hey, I really like this person, or feels right, or the weirdo thing goes off, the hair stands up in the back of your neck, and you go, I don't know. It doesn't matter what all the other credentials are. It's how does that feel? Because you're now stepping into a big purchase. Doesn't matter if it's, a $60,000 trailer, which is someone's first house or their place they're going to come hide in the winter, or if it's $6 million. It's a trust issue. And I don't think you can get that by just clicking and going. And I think that's, again, what gives the industry a bad rap, is that people have just come to go, it's easy. I want to push the easy button. But that extra time and effort involved in talking to a few people, asking other people asking for someone's reviews, asking for them to have people you could talk to that they've worked with,
references, absolutely.
is important. So to me, it's, okay, make sure you've at least talked to or met the person that you're going to work with, because you're going to be with them for a long time. I'd be in a car looking at 60 houses. No, you shouldn't look at 60 houses.
Well, if your agent's really good, you won't have to.
That's right.
Right.
Back in the day, I had a friend named Keith Traxler. He said I would pull 7 houses for him, and they would buy one of those, or I'm done. And he was literal. And he sold a lot of real estate because he listened up front.
Qualified them for
buyers don't understand necessarily what they want either. I think it's that third party ability to sift through what they're saying and not saying that makes us very credible. That's our job.
Well, I think the hardest part too is because we have so many people coming from other places, they're not familiar. And so for them, it's exploratory. They're driving to Gilbert because they have a cousin that lives there that loves it, or they're driving to Chandler, and then, but Scottsdale keeps popping up. Okay, why Scottsdale? It's like people, it's a process. I understand that. And it sometimes takes a lot of time, but, it's about, like you said, narrowing it down. Okay, what about this area is it that you like, and why, and why would you want to be here versus there? Like, those are all the questions that they need to ponder through in their own little mind.
Well, we talked about how does a buyer prepare. I think that understanding what they really want their life experience to be.
Yeah.
So,
Talk to me about lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to Mastro's
What do you enjoy
every
doing?
night? Yes.
Shopping,
The
entertainment.
answer is yes.
and there are Mastros in other parts of the valley.
There are not.
Well, and
None that matter.
I think that goes back to hiring the right agent. And I think really want consumers to know you have options. Obviously, you know that you might know 10 agents.
Right.
Interview 2 or 3 or 4. Let them know that you're interviewing other agents. we want to help people. Nobody got into this business to not help people. We're here to serve. We're here to people please. So,
Absolutely.
make us work for it.
I agree. I think, and I think it is healthy it's like on listings. People go, I think I'm going to interview one or two more. Shouldn't be afraid of that. That's good. Again, we also get to interview our clients. And our clients forget that this is a two-way street. There are a few people that we go, I've got a nice new agent I think you should work with, and who's going to get their initiation. But
the look you have on somebody's face when the agent says, you know what, I don't think that this is a good fit, but I wish you the best. They're kind of like,
You
what do
should
you
call
mean?
so-and-so.
And you've had those conversations before because sometimes it's just not a good fit.
That's
If we
right.
can't help them in the best way, then why should we force that upon them?
I think sellers need to understand that. Like,
Oh, definitely.
it's like
Yes.
we're not
right.
We're
Well,
not
we're
all
investing, right? We're investing in you just as much as you are in
Right.
us, and we have something to lose too if the relationship goes south. If we're not able to be successful for you, so we're in it. We're in it to win it.
It's thousands of dollars in marketing. It's time. It's a lot of knots in your stomach. It's took away from your
Can I ask a
family.
question? Because
Yeah.
you brought up a really good point, interviewing different agents. So, and I think it's important when you interview different agents to have like a certain set of questions that you would ask every agent. Because you want to measure them, side by side and
Yeah.
with the same questions. So what kind of questions do you think a buyer today should be asking their agent when they have that interview?
I think you should ask your agent for a resume. If they don't have a paper one, that's fine. But give them make them work for that. Show your, what have you done? Who are you working with? What kind of volume do you do? How long have you been in the business? Have you sold this type of property before?
Right.
Have you sold in this neighborhood? Just things that are pertinent to more than just general knowledge of real estate, but like specific to things that work for your needs. Are you relocating? Do you need to use a relocation company? I mean, is this an estate? Can you work with an attorney? What kinds of connections do you have with vendors? My roof is caving in. I need a roofer. Do you have somebody who can handle this for me?
Resources.
Resources.
I think another one is this your full-time passion?
Yes.
Oh my God, 100%.
And everyone's goes, oh, you just don't like part-time agents. I think the public doesn't realize the commitment it is to be really an exceptional real estate professional. And look at the time. Look at the what we laugh about our schedule? We were laughing about that. Oh, we could set our own schedule. Yeah, well,
You work every day.
It's 100 hours a week.
but we get to pick the 100 hours.
Pick
right?
the 100.
Well, and we talked about that a little sarcastically, but it's true that we're on call. Anyone who says I work 8 to 5 in real estate or I only work weekends or I only do that. That is not the person that is going to be able to help you the best. On the other side, we've got a few agents who are part-time, but we've coached them to have a partner.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with it. So let's say, you've got a friend who's an agent and they're trustworthy and all that. What's their plan of attack? So I want to go look at houses, and that we know what that's like. That can be, there's 6 that just popped up.
Yeah.
Okay, let me check my work schedule. Doesn't work. Who do you have that will help you do that? And can I meet them? And what's their involvement going to be? And what's the communication chain going to be like? We talked about that as well. The communication piece.
With teams today too, a lot of times you're hiring, you think you're hiring one person, but they have a team of people. So you can hire that one person, and then the consumer feels like I've never seen that person again because they get handed off to the
Common
team.
complaint of
So
teams.
who am I going to be working with if this is a team is probably a really good question too.
And that's not a knock on teams, but it's how they present actually how a team member is working with them. And, I think everyone wants to feel like they're important. And so if you get the handshake handoff without any more, you lose that feeling of importance.
But every client is important.
That's what I mean.
Every single person is important, and they need to feel that way.
Yeah.
And when you hand somebody off to an assistant or TC, I don't know, whatever, it just doesn't. They lose that feeling of like, hey, I'm not important to that person, and it's like, and then there goes your confidence. The confidence.
Well, the trust level drops.
Yeah, sure.
And you need to know that you're all on the same team, you and your client. That's a big component of the trust. And I've had a number of recent new client referrals, and I'm finding out that I'm their second and third agent. And the number one thing that I'm hearing is that that lack of trust broke, and it was typically because there was a lack of communication or a handoff. So
Why is it that only 18% of people use their real estate agent a second time because of lack of communication?
Right.
So
Follow up.
if, that typically will also be that way in a transaction. It's if you're transactional. So that's maybe the flip side of people who, hey, I do 100 units, 200 units a year. Okay. Again, I'm not criticizing people that do that, but you got to think about how are they communicating with their clients, because we know when we get 3 or 4 at the same time, we get cross-eyed because if you're doing a really good job, it takes an immense amount of time to manage all that. So what are their systems in place to make sure that happens? So they're front and center, top of mind all the time.
Sure. Well, one of the best things I think any buyer or any client should do with their agent is establish what the best forms of communication are. Because some people prefer text, some people want to talk on the phone, some people like just email me, and then there's others that say, listen, when you have an offer, let me know. Like, don't talk to me otherwise. So it really depends on the client, and that's specific, which is why that consult is important, because you want to establish that up front.
Yeah, you can't meet their needs if you don't know how to relay the information.
Right.
And we all think the best way is the phone, because some of us are a little older. But there's generations. I have a daughter, I don't think has ever listened to a voicemail, and I'm aware of that. So
you call her and she texts you back and says, what's up?
Yeah. Well, and at first it was like, don't you listen to your voicemails? And it's like, no, that was point blank. Okay, so maybe I should go, leaving a voicemail probably isn't the best way to communicate. And so I think agents get that way too. I called, I left them voicemail over and over and over again. They don't respond. Okay, well, try another avenue of communication.
Smoke signals.
Yeah, hey, if that works, that's right. Except when there's a fire ban on, don't do it then.
Right.
Which happens. Are you buying a wood fireplace? Do you think you can really use it? I don't know.
Sure.
That's a whole other story.
we have a lot
But
of
you're-
no burn days.
Right.
Not a no burn days, and it's not burn
Especially
out
recently,
days.
right?
So, crime,
Don't know anything about it.
don't you?
Those statistics
Just
are available
fashion,
online.
just fashion crimes.
Like, you can go online, look for crime statistics in any
committed
given
one.
area. I think it's important for anyone to know, though, you're not going to find an area that has zero crime.
There is no such thing. Think
No.
about I was thinking about North Scottsdale when we had the was it the 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. Burglaries, because they all knew people were up at the club having dinner
Yeah,
at the
dinner
same time over and
burglars.
over again. That's when the break-ins would happen. So it's I think we get back to those 3 schools and crime, and everyone connects. You got to understand what you want. There's always an area for that.
Right, right.
And there are still, I don't care what Heather says, there are other Mastros, so other steakhouses. But no.
Well, it's fun, like a lot of what I've encountered too lately is people want to be here for a lifestyle. Sometimes having knowledge of the different communities and what they offer. Like there's certain people who are like, well, I want a community that has like all these activities, but I don't necessarily play golf, so I don't want to have to pay for something I don't use.
Right.
So, and then some people want to be in a gated community. I mean, it's just, and knowing which communities offer what. And I think that's a part of like being a good agent here in North Scottsdale is like knowing what's available and the HOA dues and what golf courses you can join without a wait of 5 years and $500,000 later. And, like Desert Highlands is a really unique community because
Yeah.
you get that automatic.
Automatic, yep, it's an HOA amenity.
Right.
The other thing I've seen more of in my clientele, and maybe it's because I'm getting older, I hope not, is people looking for 55 and over again, but not necessarily Sun City.
Right. And there's not a lot in Scottsdale.
There isn't. And there's some little pocket ones around, but really, you either got to go Southeast Valley or you're going west. And
And Terra Vita's been huge. Terra Vita really blew up lately.
Oh, it's off the charts, and it's not even really 55 and over, but it's starting to feel that
But if
way.
you look at the demographics,
Yeah, you don't see
Yeah.
too many school buses driving through.
correct.
So what's your best tip coming into May? So for someone thinking about buying a house,
Be prepared.
be prepared.
Have that talk with an agent, get in front of a lender, know what you're getting into, and start figuring out what's important to you. What's number one?
Yeah, I think if you can create that picture for yourself on what's going to work for you in terms of the style of the home, the community that you want to be in, your budget, understanding your budget, and being able to convey that to an agent should be able to ask you the right questions to understand what it is that you need.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important too, as much as there's more inventory to look at today, I think there's a complacency sometimes, when you're working with an agent where you're just getting those listings from the MLS automated, right? But there are agents out there that take a more proactive approach, and I highly suggest that.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of cancellations too.
Yes, so you have canceled listings, expired listings for sale by owner. So these are not on the MLS, and then there are, pocket listings or off-market properties that, through the community with other agents that we become aware of. So having an agent that's really engaged within those communities that you're interested in can help you to find those homes, and it might not be on the MLS. So you want a proactive agent, not a reactive agent.
And we all have networks, although I will say I'm going to give a little commentary, very short. I don't understand the idea of real estate companies that want to hide their listings.
Right.
Our number one job is to promote at the highest level to the most amount of people and the most amount of agents.
Exposure equals money.
Yeah, and higher price.
Right.
So anyhow.
Yeah, and I don't see that as being a long-term disruptor. The real estate commissioner's probably already on to some of those companies and sniffing around that. But I think the general public understands that, the more market exposure they have, the better.
Yeah.
And it really only serves potentially the listing agent of those secret hidden listings,
Yeah.
because they can potentially double dip that. When in reality they could have maybe gotten more if it was on the open market.
Right.
So.
I mean, there are some unique situations where I think it makes
Right.
sense to have an
Sure,
exclusive,
absolutely, yeah.
but it's definitely the exception.
Yeah, maybe a unique property or situation, or a high-profile seller,
Correct.
something like
that's,
that.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Van Goghs hanging in
Yeah,
the home.
yeah.
Picassos.
We don't want that
Exactly.
publicized.
No.
Yeah.
So let's face it, if it's a $25 million listing, is the MLS really your best way to market that
No.
property? Probably not.
Mastros.
Yeah,
That's
and
true.
I wanted to go back to your question about, hot tip for buyers right now.
Yeah.
Use the market conditions, today's market conditions, to your advantage. So I'm sure you've heard that there's a little bit more inventory than what we've normally seen. We're in a balanced market right now, so this is the first time in quite a while where you can ask the seller for concessions
Yep.
and actually negotiate and feel like you're getting something. When you're paying, premium for a home, you can ask for potentially some closing costs that'll help you get into that. Affordability and interest rates are a major topic right now, and anything you can do to make things just a little bit easier.
That's actually a really good point. And
Yeah.
through the first quarter, because I'm like that numbers guy that looks at all this data and stuff, right? So I'm looking at the Cromford report, and through the first quarter, it was 47% of all sales had a seller's concession, with a median seller concession of $10,000.
Yeah.
So when you talk about closing costs and preparing and understanding what it is that you need, I think knowing what's available to you if you don't feel like you have the money yourself too, because a lot of times people they have this false thought that they need to put 20% down when buying a home.
Right.
But first off, there's mortgage products out there that allow you to put as little as 3 or 3.5% down, or zero.
Zero, yeah.
Right. So, but knowing too that even with the closing costs, you can finance those, or ask the seller to pay those, however you want to talk to it. But it is an option, and it's an opportunity for somebody to get into a home that maybe couldn't or didn't think they could.
The other piece of that is what's interesting is that there are people that think I should automatically be able to ask for closing costs, and they don't necessarily need it to purchase.
Right.
So you think about you're writing an offer. What's the most appealing way to make an offer to a seller? Well, let's say it's a seller who's owned their home for 25 years. they maybe don't even know what the concept of seller paid closing costs are. There can be some resistance to that. So if you don't need it, sometimes clean and understanding, clean and simple and straightforward buys you more than it's full price, but you're going to pay $10,000 in closing costs. You're doing all this stuff, and then they go, "I don't even understand that." And
Right.
sometimes we can't even explain it if we're the listing agent in a way that they would understand because it just doesn't make sense.
So, it's totally foreign to them. It's like
And
another
that
language.
again gets back to who's negotiating on your behalf. Is it someone who takes the time to understand the other side?
Right.
Work with that agent, get to know them, because
Communication.
yes, it's everything all the way through. Any last tidbits? Nothing.
One more thing about going back to first-time home buyers. There's a ton of loan products out there right now that are geared towards first-time home buyers. So if you are a first-time home buyer, talk to your lender about that stuff. There's low down payment. There's down payment assistance programs.
There's grants.
So there's grants. There's things available to make home ownership a possibility, especially if you are still renting and you want to get into a home for the first time. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think having Heather and Stephanie has added a new dimension, don't you, Bill?
I absolutely agree.
I think I'm happier, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah, and I think the crowd is happier.
Well, I like talking to you too, Jay.
And Andy's happier because he suggested it. He said you gotta bring some glamour in. But
Oh, yeah.
but they're both very, very smart agents.
Yeah.
I know that because I see their paperwork sometimes.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us.
With that, if you think of any
been an honor
questions,
to be here.
we're on most of the podcast channels. Apple Podcasts, we're on iHeart, we're on Spotify, you name it, we're out there. So ask us questions. We'd love to answer them. If you're looking for an agent, look these two up. You can look Bill up too,
Thanks, Jay.
I'm sorry, Bill too. I'm sorry. Don't look me up. No. But we're here to serve. And so with that, like, subscribe. What else is there? Comment. Follow. All those things.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the orange. Till next time.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.